Hey everyone, welcome to the first video lecture of the school year. And today we're going to be looking at the French and Indian War so we can have some background as to why the British colonists decided to go to war with Great Britain and revolt, which resulted in the American independence and the founding of the United States. So, French and Indian War. So in 1750, before this war started, here is what the country looks like. North America. Up here you see the British claimed most of what is now Canada. The French are claiming the Northeast and the Ohio River Valley and what becomes known as Louisiana Territory here. The British colonists, their 13 original colonies are here, and this is disputed territory. And this is kind of where the violence starts and the fighting starts between the French and the British in this Ohio River Valley. And you can see Russia's up here, and then Spain down here, where the conquistadors have controlled all of Mexico. So, the French beginning. So the French start expanding into Canada and the lower North America, trying to gain control of the Mississippi River. And they are basically there to control the fur trade. The beaver pelts that are there are very, very valuable and a fashion commodity back in Europe. And so the French aren't really there to occupy and grow the colony in population size. They are just looking to trap furs and to sell them and trade them. And they want to control the Mississippi River because they are also, based on where they control the what's going to be known as New Orleans. And so they want access to the Caribbean Ocean and a waterway that takes them all the way back to Europe. Let's see if that slide goes. Oh, so the French move into the Ohio River Valley along with the British, and they come in contact with each other. And they start having some skirmishes, some land disputes, some arguments and disagreements. And one thing we got to remember is before either of them get there, you also have Native Americans that are living in all that area. So both these sides are claiming they own this land, where the Native Americans are like, we've lived here for thousands of years, so this is our land. So that's a kind of a continuous theme. So colonies. So the 13 American colonies come into play here. They start moving west. They start outgrowing their area. They start wanting more land. They start learning past the Appalachian Mountains that there is more land. And so they start going that direction. And the skirmishes keep taking place between the French and the British. And Native American tribes are allying with both sides. And so an ally is someone that's going to work with you. And if you go to war, they're going to fight along your side. And both sides are getting Native American tribes to join with them by paying them, by trading with them, by promising things to them. So the French definitely are promising, hey, if we win, we will leave you alone. We're here to just trap. We're not here to take over completely. And they said if the British win, these colonists are going to just come out here and destroy the land, take your land, and force you out west. And the French were not wrong, based on what we know from history, that when the British colonists did move west, or Americans, we did move Native American tribes farther and farther west onto Indian reservations. So this is called the 7 Years' War. In the rest of the world, in the United States, or the North America, the fighting that took place is called the French and Indian War. But this is really truly the First World War. And the reason being is because you have other nations other than Great Britain and France fighting. You have the Germans fighting along with the British, along with Native Americans. And on France's side, you have Spain, Austria, Russia, and other Native American tribes. So this is a global war. So there is fighting going on in North America, but there's also fighting going on in the ocean, and there's fighting going on in Europe. So this is happening in more than one location. So a lot of historians view this as the First World War. We obviously don't call it that. We call it the French and Indian War, and the rest of the world calls it the 7 Years' War. Now, remember, when we say French and Indian War, it does not mean the French were fighting Indians. The British gave that name because the British were fighting both French and Indians. So that's one thing you need to make sure you remember with this. So most battles that were won early on were by the French. They were strong in Canada, but there's battles taking place everywhere, like I said, throughout all of North America, throughout Europe as well. There's just a depiction of some of the fighting going on in Europe. So, Mr. Old George Washington. Okay, this is before he's an American citizen, before he's the United States president, before he is a folk hero in the United States. So he is a commanding officer in the British Army. I believe he's a corporal. But he is in a battle, and the general that is leading the troops gets killed. And so George Washington basically becomes, a puppet general, meaning like he wasn't promoted, but he led troops in battle. And he knows the only way to get glory and to get honor in the British Empire is to win at war and be victorious in battle. So there is a young George Washington. We'll learn more about him. He was very tall at the time, 6'3", when the average height was around 5'8". He was considered to be one of the strongest men in North America. Some of his feats are, written in history. He's a great horseback rider, good commander. He was good with the ladies. He was a great dancer. So, he was a founding father, and he is now an American hero. So when he's in battle, he should have died a couple different times. And just think what our country would have been like if he did die. I don't even know where we would be. I don't know if we would even have a president or the Constitution, because those things he was directly fundamental with getting started. At the Battle of Pittsburgh, he was on horseback, and one of his horses was shot out from underneath him. He got on another horse, and that horse was shot out from underneath him. So he had two horses shot out from underneath him during the battle. And then after the battle's over, as he's checking his uniform, he sees several musket ball holes in his coat. And that means he was riding and a bullet just passed his body into his coat. So he starts believing that he was destined for great things, that God was giving him providence, meaning providing a path for him to become great. He doesn't know what it is in the 1750s, but he knows he's destined for great things, because he said, otherwise I would have just died. He goes back to Virginia after the French and Indian War, or before the war's even over, and he becomes a gentleman farmer. He becomes the largest whiskey distiller in all of North America. Mount Vernon is still around today that you can take tours of, which is his home. And he's just kind of biding his time. And he probably would have been okay just living life as a wealthy farmer, but other things are going to come to his path, and he's going to have to lead the country once again. So there he is leading in battle. There's the general that was killed. So the colonists, Benjamin Franklin, who also, negotiates peace during the United States Revolution, but he starts calling for unity of the colonies during the French and Indian War, because he knows the colonists are very strong if they're together. But right now they're all kind of separate. They're all kind of their own. Like I'm a Georgian, or I'm a Virginian, or I'm from Massachusetts, and I'm not from the colonies. So there's no unity, and so he starts calling for that. His call for unity sets in place the Continental Congress that is going to take place during the Revolution. That's going to kind of help guide and lead the country through the American Revolution. This cartoon was actually done during the French and Indian War, but it's also used during the American Revolution with the idea that all of the colonies are part of a snake. And if they're not unified, they're just going to die. But if they join together, they're strong and they can strike as a whole, and they will be victorious. So the French are going to lose. That's why we don't speak French in the United States today. So French defeated at the Battle of Quebec by British forces led by James Wolfe. There's General Wolfe. There is part of the battle. Obviously, there's more people that were in this battle. There's more fighting, more hand-to-hand combat. It's not like they just stood there and shot. They would usually fire 1 or 2 volleys and then charge, and then it's a lot of hand-to-hand fighting and combat. So, aftermath, the Treaty of Paris. So, one thing I want you to understand about treaties is that treaties are not always named after the countries that signed them or who was involved in the war. The treaties are named after where they were signed and negotiated. So that's typically what happens. So, so this is called the Treaty of Paris because British officials and French officials, along with other countries, gather there to negotiate this peace treaty. So it's not, so just understand that the title is given to the location where it is signed. So the French are going to get the West Indies back, which are some island nations in the Caribbean that they had lost previously to the British. And the French are actually going to give the Spanish Louisiana Territory before this meeting and before this treaty because they don't want the British to get it. So they basically say, hey, we got rid of it. We don't have the ability to negotiate now and give that to you. So the Louisiana Territory is going to change hands a couple of different times over the next 60 years or so, 50 years, until finally the United States is going to purchase it in 1803 with Thomas Jefferson, and considered one of the greatest purchases in American history. 3 cents an acre, pretty good deal. Gets us all of 11 states. So the British get the Ohio River Valley, which is that location which makes up like today, like Ohio, Indiana, part of Illinois, several rivers that flow right into the Mississippi River. And the colonists, they are confident because they helped win this war. They're like, hey, we stood up against the French. And so they are confident in their ability to fight, and they want credit for risking their lives in this war. Because remember, they are British citizens, but they're starting to feel a little bit like themselves. They're developing their own culture, their own identity over here in North America, and they're not really, conditioned to the king, or like they don't necessarily see the king as their king anymore. So after the war, the Native Americans are the ones in the worst spot. No one's there to protect them. The French leave, and they try to take back the Ohio River Valley in a couple different battles and skirmishes with some leaders, and they fail. And so this is kind of the start of them getting pushed out of the Ohio River Valley. So after the war, 1763. So a lot of changes here. The French, gone. British get all this territory, and they get the Ohio River Valley, which is something they really wanted. Now, pretty soon, this is going to become an issue. Who controls the Mississippi River? But this red line is extremely important and is one of the causes of the American Revolution. In 1763, the British say, look, colonists, we don't want you going past this imaginary line. They didn't build a wall. It was just, hey, you can't go past the Appalachian Mountains. Because out west, Native Americans. And the British didn't want to be drawn into another war, and they didn't want to protect the colonists. So they said, hey, to keep that from happening, just don't go out west. Just stay here. And the colonists are like, wait a second. You're going to make us pay more taxes, and we can't get land, and we fought in this war? That's bogus. We need something out of this. So how does this affect the revolution? Kind of just talked about it. The British give colonists no credit for the role in winning the war. They don't give them access to that land out west. And so the colonists are very upset. And the colonists are going to start getting taxed. So the war was very expensive, and they start taxing them to help pay for the war. And the colonies get mad about this, and they are going to rebel. This is not the only reason, but the French and Indian War basically causes the American Revolution because the colonists get upset about not getting land, and taxes are going to start taking place. And we'll learn more about some of those taxes, like the Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, the Townshend Act, all these different acts and taxes that are placed on the colonists, and they don't see any benefit from it. They're like, hey, we're just paying extra because you made us fight in this war, and we didn't get any things out of it. So that is all about the French and Indian War, and hope you learned something, and we will talk to you later.